make sure the bill goes forward. I know, and I'm not trying to do anything, I'm not trying to. That's. Thank you. Okay, sorry, Bob. Sorry. So sorry.
Co-Chairman Anderson, your meeting is on live too.
Wonderful, thank you. Can you call roll, please?
Senator Anderson.
Here.
Senator Guru.
Here.
Senator Nethercott. Here. Senator Salzar. Chairman Kinski.
Excuse.
3 present. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a quorum. We'll move right ahead. Welcome to Senate Appropriations Committee. We're going to hear 4 bills today, first of which is Property Tax Refund Program, House Bill 4 engrossed. Is there anyone here who wants to talk about this bill? There is one that wants to talk about it, yeah.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Brenda Hinson, Director of the Department of Revenue. Appreciate the opportunity to talk about property tax refund program. My intent, because I know you're short on time, is to really focus on the fiscal note. This bill was amended in committee to include costs for the administration of this bill. We did some research, and we believe that when you expand this program to 165% of median household income, that we anticipate an additional 30% as far as applications. I did provide the committee with a handout. It's mainly general information, and I'd be happy to answer any questions related to the program. But on the back page, shows the calculations that we use to estimate the increased participation, and that would be the 2,431. So basically what we've done is we've got the breakout of the population and in each of the counties and what the income grouping is for each one of those counties. And then what we did is we looked at the participation rate at the 125% of median, and then we applied that same percentage to each of the counties to arrive at that approximately 30% more applications. What we're asking for in order to change our program, we do have a program that the Enterprise Technology Services wrote for us, and we propped it up last year. You can apply for this program online. With that, though, in adding these tiers, we have to change that program. And they're estimating 3 weeks at a cost of $10,000. So that's our first ask. We also are asking for 2 temporary positions, approximately $60,000. For the temporary positions. You'll see that the effective date of this is immediately upon signature. We typically send all the applications out to those that applied the prior year around April 1st. Right now, we're just waiting to see what happens with this bill so that we can send the applications to the printers. We anticipate if this bill were to pass and be applicable, keeping in mind fiscal year 25 are the applications for 2023 tax year refunds, fiscal year 26 property tax year 2025. So we're somewhat waiting. The one thing I did want to mention is this program doubled in size last year. So in 2019, to give you an idea, we processed 1,587 applications. In 2020, the program was not funded due to COVID cuts. And so then in 2021, we processed 4,395 applications. But as you remember, last session, we bumped up the median household income that they could qualify. It used to be 75% of median household income for the county where your property is located. That got bumped up to 125%, and that doubled the program, and we processed over 9,000, almost just short of 10,000 applications last year. We received 1 FTE to process those, but I can tell you we it takes the 8 people that are in admin services almost all of their time during that 6-month time period that we're processing these. We do have the ability for them to apply online, but quite honestly, most of our applications are still manual. They're either turned into the local county treasurer, and the county treasurer sends them to us to process. But we would just ask for your favorable approval of the 70,000. And there's only one point that I wanted to bring up, interestingly enough, and I'm not sure the reason for this. So the governor's budget ask was for $20 million for the biennium for the current property tax refund program with the current law. This bill had a fiscal note, and I believe that you have an updated fiscal note that states that the expansion with this bill would be an additional 1.1 million for fiscal year 25 and an additional 1.2 million for fiscal year 26. So that's an additional 2.3 million that there currently is no appropriation for that I can see. So I don't know if the intent is that we would continue to fund this bill out of the $10 million that we anticipate it's going to cost for the program under current law, that we might go in excess of that and that we would come back in the supplemental for the following year for refunds. I don't know what the mindset is, but I did want to point out that there, even though there's a fiscal note of 2.3 million, there is no funding in the bill as it sits today. Be happy to answer any questions.
All right, questions for Brenda? Questions?
Thank you
Yes,
much.
Senator Grew.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Good afternoon, Director. I think I told someone on some interview that I thought with all these tax bills that by now you'd stroke out, but it's nice to see you here, and I'm glad to see you seem to be feeling fine. But the day is young. So now the fiscal note that I've got here says it's 24 LSO 0252. It says 1.48 and 1.56 million over the next 25 and 26. So the numbers are a little bit different. But does this count in your FTE as well? Your 2 FTEs? No.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Guru, so the first fiscal note was the program had 5 additional tiers and up to 175% of median gross income. The engrossed copy that came over from the House had reduced that to 165 and only 2 tiers.
Oh.
And so that was the updated numbers that I received from LSO was the 1.1 and the 1.2. And then related to the program, the FTE was, we were approved to add that position last year. So no, there is no funding in this fiscal note for that position. It's just part of our normal budget. And the 60,000 are, that is for 2 temporary employees, full-time temporary employees, basically from April 1st till the end of September when we're processing these applications.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Director, I don't even see the 60,000 in this bill.
It would be a standing committee amendment.
Oh, okay.
For 10 and 60, Mr. Chairman.
I don't have that either. It is? Is it?
It's the white paper right there.
There you go.
That's all roll calls.
It's the digest. So it's right here, it's the digest.
I have the digest.
Well, so if you flip back,
Oh,
so here's the.
okay. All right, thank you. They got the 165% in the bill. But do they have the 60?
Mr. Chairman, it would be section 2 of the standing committee amendment. where it states there's appropriated 10,000 from general fund for programming, and then B is appropriated
60,000.
60,000 from the general fund for staffing.
Okay. Okay, any other questions for the director?
Thank you.
No, none, absolutely none. You covered it. You covered it. Anyone else to talk about House Bill 4?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Jeremiah Reeman here on behalf of the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. I'll keep it really brief, but there are two parts to this bill. There's the state portion of it, and then there's the county optional program. And just wanted to note that we're a part of this. We support this legislation and where it stands. And just to note how much of a financial commitment the counties have made so far. There are 5 counties with optional programs. Those are Teton, Sublette, Lincoln, Albany, and Converse County. And the total of their commitment is roughly $4 million for the current biennium. I certainly anticipate we'll see more counties get involved and perhaps have additional funding into the system to support this particular effort across the state. With that, Mr. Chairman, I stand for any questions.
Any questions for the county commissioners? Any questions? Any questions? Hearing none, thank you for your testimony. Thank you for your testimony. Anyone else want to speak on House Bill 4, Property Tax Refund Program? Property Tax Refund Program. Any public want to speak on House Bill 4? Any public want to speak? Hearing none, I'll close public comment, and committee, what's your pleasure?
Second.
Moved and seconded, any discussion? My discussion is, if this is engrossed, how come those changes aren't in there? It says it's engrossed. But those changes aren't in the bill, unless I'm reading it wrong.
Well, the first one is.
The 165 is, yeah.
So, Mr. Chairman, the amendments that you're seeing, that is to engrossed copy, so this happened in committee. And so, once it came over here, so it's after the engrossed, so it came over without any appropriation. The House considered an amendment to the bill to add the $70,000 in funding to administer the bill, but it failed on the House side. So then when it came over to the Senate, it was amended in committee and then re-referred to appropriations. So that's why it's not in the engrossed copy.
It was amended in the Senate.
Yes.
I thought it was amended in the House. Okay. All right, that answers that. Any other questions? Any other questions? Hearing none, sensing the body is ready to vote, would you do a roll call, please?
Senator Anderson.
Aye.
Senator Guru.
Aye.
Senator Nethercott.
Aye.
Chairman Anderson, 3 ayes for House Bill 004 engrossed.
House Bill 4 squeaks by the Senate Appropriations Committee. Next on the list is House Bill 166 engrossed. Now I know that word means something different. House Bill 166, there anybody like to speak on House Bill 166? Senator Scott. You cleared the room, Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, we do have the House sponsored with the well if you want.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, House Bill 166, Education Savings Account 1 is here because there is a $20 million appropriation and a couple other small appropriations. The bill started life as a joint committee bill, failed with introduction in the House by 1 vote, came to revived the sponsor and came back in a slightly cleaned down version. Is that accurate? It has two approaches in it to the problem of the difficulties we're having teaching reading in the early grades, which is fundamental to the rest of education. As you may well know, the recalibration consultants criticized us for our problems there, said that we were not getting our money's worth out of our public school system. Pretty bluntly. And this bill contains two approaches, and it came to us from the House, dealing with that problem. One is education savings accounts for the K-12 system, which would enable us to fund some private school education. And the other was a preschool program. They're both approaches I could support to dealing with the problem that we see in the teaching reading in the public school system. We had in the Senate committee some vociferous opposition to the preschool program from some sources that I didn't expect to be opposed to it. And the gist of what they said was that it hadn't been well enough thought out and would get us in trouble, wasn't ready for prime time. And the committee agreed with that. So the standing committee amendment removed that approach and left the other one. And there is a constitutional issue, and let me be blunt about it. Let me read the provision in Article 7, Section 8, which says that nor shall any portion of any public school fund ever be used to support or assist any private school or any school, academy, seminary, college, or other institutional learning controlled by any church or sectarian organization or religious domination whatsoever. Now, in the interim committee, not this interim, it was some of it was repeated in this interim, but in the previous interim, we heard from some very sharp lawyers who had dealt with this issue in other states, who said with that language means you can't use the school funds. But they said two things. One, you could, by not using school funds, by using the general fund, probably meet the constitutional standard. And so that's why this bill is funded out of the general fund, and it's important that it be funded out of the general fund, Mr. Chairman. They also said there was U.S. Supreme Court decision, which said that if you fund private schools, you have to fund religious schools too. You can't discriminate. And there was a Montana case and there was a Maine case, and the Supreme Court are pretty clear on the issue. So those are the constitutional considerations. Our Legislative Service Office cautioned us about those, and I'm not sure they agree with the attorneys that we heard from. So there is some doubt here, and Mr. Chairman, we do this, I do expect it will be a court test, and we'll find out what we can do and what we can't here in Wyoming. Having said that, it does seem like an approach that is likely to deal with the problem, and we're getting increasing pressure from part of the public that is dissatisfied with the results of the public school system, and I think with cause. We've got to do, and I think I'm in favor of multiple approaches to fixing the problem. The appropriation, when we took out the preschool part, we did not change the appropriation. There's, if you see on page 28, starting at the bottom of the engrossed copy, page 28, there's a $20 million appropriation. And then there's two further appropriations for the State Department of Education, $480,000 for 2 employees and 400,000 then subsequently for contractual services. And, Mr. Chairman, I think the State Department of Education, I think they're here and they could testify, but I think they need that. Their primary expertise is in administering our complicated school finance system, which is complicated and takes some effort, and in dealing with the complication of federal grants. And this bill proposes something new for them. So I think they probably really do need that appropriation to give us a good test on it and do it well. So, Mr. Chairman, I could talk forever, which I'm sure you don't want, on the problems we have with the teaching reading in the public schools. And I can furnish you with the district by district most recent summaries we've got on the YTOP desk that shows the problems. But in the interest of time, I'd be happy to deal with you individually, because I do have those figures with me if you want them. Mr. Chairman, Representative Austin was the prime sponsor of this version of the bill.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman, Committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. People ask me what happened to my arm. I said, it's people twisting my arm on this bill for the last several months, but the current bill as it came out of the Senate, education doesn't really, it's not my bill anymore. This is the original bill from over a year ago that we've been trying to compromise off of. So some large changes from the Senate education amendments. I had a tiered income system in there. You know, Article 16, Section 6, Part I of our Constitution says we're not allowed to loan or give its credit or make donations to or in aid of any individual, association, or corporation except for the necessary support of the poor. So when I had put in my tiered income levels, it was to take care of that constitutional question. We had talked to the attorneys and met with people over that. The current Senate amendment is $6,000 for anybody. So you can be a single mom making minimum wage, or you could be a multimillionaire in somewhere and sending your kid to private school. So that's a constitutional question we're gonna have to address. Also, I had on an accountability test from other states. I went to a conference last summer on this. They said the number one thing is we need some part of accountability if we're spending tax money. What these other states are saying is kids aren't being held accountable, and a few years later they show up back into our school system, years behind their peers. So that was one other thing to look at. And then the pre-kindergarten piece, as an education person, I thought was vital. And I think it's the best bang for our buck. You know, this money would be all 4-year-olds in the state. We're not hiring teachers, we're not paying benefits, we're not building schools. We're giving these kids a chance to learn early from lower income levels and hopefully giving them a chance to make a choice to catch up with their peers. So those are the changes I just wanted you to be aware of the compromises that have been made and that are no longer in here. So I could stand for questions. I appreciate your time and everybody's hard work on this bill.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
may I ask the sponsor, I think the House Reduced Appropriation, this version, can I have that correct?
Chairman, Mr. Chairman, yes, our original bill, we had 40 million, the House reduced it to 20.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
Thank you, Mr.
Senator
Chairman.
Northcott.
On what basis did you ask for the $40 million appropriation and Senate education, since you're in the business of appropriating money, evidently, and cutting the request? What was your basis for the 20? What's your basis for the 40?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, the original 40 was just the work from the committee that it started on. I'd put together numbers for months. So I guess my numbers are a little bit different overall. But the $20 million would definitely be sufficient. The $40 million was excessive.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Representative Clauston, what is the basis for your $40 million appropriation in the original bill? Can you articulate with specificity what your basis was for that $40 million?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, the $40 million came out of the original committee work. And that's what was suggested.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes?
Senator Scott, do you have any specific information as to why $20 million?
No, yes, okay. What we think is that you need to have a recent test of it in several places to see if it works. And you can see 6,000 a pupil, which of course is much less than you spend in the K-12 system. And we took out the Dean's test, which we think has constitutional significance for the preschool, who's outside the age range. In general. But I think it doesn't have constitutional significance with with education spending in general.
Mr. Chairman?
So.
Just a minute.
6,000 apiece, and we were looking for a decent test. And my judgment is the 40 million give you a good test and the 20 million give you an adequate test. But that's a matter of judgment.
Question here, Senator Scott.
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess what I was hoping to hear is anticipated or estimated number of students that would be participating in the program, why the $6,000, those types of pieces. What I've heard is no answer and/or a wild guess. That's quotes out of both of you. Anything more substantive or tangible that we can cite to, such as students?
The 6,000, you would get, if I'm doing my math correctly, you would get 300 students, that's 300 plus. That'd give you a decent test.
Mr. Chairman, follow up?
Yes, follow up.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And so I have not studied this bill as members of the Education Committee have in the past. And so I recognize that we're currently, it's my understanding in this moment in time, because oil is where it's at, we currently do not have a structural deficit in education. But with the passage of some of the property tax relief measures, we now do have a structural deficit in education funding. Of course, those are still pending within the legislature, but that is in fact a reality based on the amendments that we've put into those property tax bills. And so my question with this additional 20 million appropriation, and then again, the growth of the Department of Education with the additional numbers of employees to fund this program, and a creation of separate accounts, which I know is making our budget very complex and too complex, and so we're adding to that complexity, particularly in school finance and education, by adding these accounts. Will this become part of that structural funding to education of which we now currently, in this moment of time, have that deficit? Is this contributing to that?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I think I understand where the senator is going now. This has the potential to save you significant money. Our school finance system is such that in state dollars, we are spending about 16,000, if I'm remembering right, between 15 and 16,000 per student. This would spend 6 by getting outside the current public school system, getting into a private system. They are much cheaper. Like most of the other states, they are cheaper.
Mr. Chairman?
And
Question here.
Senator
it's
Scott.
6,000.
Question here, Senator Scott.
Senator Scott, so it's your position, and Representative Closton is a sponsor of the bill, that by passing this legislation, the cost savings will come from the reduction and the elimination of positions within public education. Is that correct?
Let me see if I understand your question. My position is that it's 6,000 with this system, because that's what's in the bill, what we would pay, versus 16,000 in school funds per student. Now, you do have to recognize that we may pick up a portion of those students who would otherwise go to private school anyhow. That's to be expected, So it's, and we don't know what that percentage will be. But the difference is large enough so that we can still pick up quite a percentage and still come out financially ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Representative.
I don't think the finances is the key thing here. I think the effort is to get a way around the failures in the current system.
Question.
Well, we're the Appropriations Committee, so our interest is in the
Yeah, we have to
appropriations
look at
of
the numbers.
$20 million plus full-time positions and a new account. And so I'm just asking questions regarding the appropriations and the basis for that amount, and if it's going to contribute to our structural deficit, which you indicate no. And the basis for that, my understanding is because our public education system and how that's calculated at approximately 16,000 per student is based on a number of factors. But you think that as a result of the number of public school students leaving public education in exchange for private education, that will reduce the cost on public education. That's the senator's position. Is that correct?
That's correct. I can't give you a precise figure because I don't know how many would actually come from the public school system as opposed to already going to private school. I just don't know. We don't know, and we'll find out.
Follow-up?
I'll leave it alone. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So my numbers came from, we looked at the number of four-year-olds, we looked at income levels, we looked at the tiered system of income. So pre-K, right, pre-kindergarten is the four-year-olds through K through 12. So the minimum number I came up with, which included the four-year-olds, was $12 million was the minimum to run the program for 2 years. But all my figures have been taken out now. You know, I had the tier system, which is gone, the kindergartens are gone. So my estimates, all the work that I did, I can't really apply it to the way it's currently amended.
Okay, all right. All right, let me make sure I understand this. On page 5, you're asking for $5,000 for the below 250%, 3,000 for another group, 1,000 for another group. Then I go over to page 28, you're asking for 20 million. I go to page 29, you're asking for 480,000. And on page 29, you're asking for 400,000. Is that all the appropriations we have in here?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
The graduated piece came out when we simplified the bill. When we removed the preschool portion of it for not being ready for prime time, and we simplified it by removing the means test, that came out, and my understanding is correct figure in standing committee, as a result of standing committee amendments, is 6,000 per student.
Oh, okay. All right,
Mr. Chairman?
yes.
Just a quick question, not necessarily on the appropriation, but on page 11 lines 9 through 13.
Page 11, 9 through 15. Yes.
Was this originally in Representative Closton's bill? And I could go look back and forth, but
That particular provision, I believe, was originally in the committee bill and yours, was it not? Or did that come in the House?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, this was an amendment that was added later on the Committee of the Whole.
in the
And
House.
it echoes the statute, but we took it out in the standing committee amendment and redid it. Is that not correct, Senator Brennan? Because I think it was your amendment that did it.
You took it out?
Took it out and redid it.
Oh,
What does it say now?
What we've done is where the minimum curriculum is listed, it's listed after civics that should include US Constitution and the Constitution of Wyoming.
Which is what's in the statute for the public schools.
Yes, I recall from my own education. So the language about including the study of and devotion to the American institution and ideals, which of course is subjective on the American, is that remaining in the bill?
Mr. Chairman, through you, Senator Brennan will correct me if I'm wrong. We took that out and stuck with the US and Wyoming Constitution, same as we do in statute for the public schools.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. That was a good Senate amendment. Thank you.
Am I right?
Yeah, it's on that.
Just put it
Yeah. Wow.
Well, we come to the ringer.
Any other questions for the bringers? Wow.
We're a little dodgy when people come asking us for tens of millions of dollars in light of recent experiences.
All right, if there's no further questions for them, thank you for the bringers. Is there any other agencies that would like to speak about House Bill 166?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Trent Carroll, Wyoming Department of Education. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have, and it sounds like there may be some questions. I don't know if I can answer all of them, but I can certainly try to answer any questions you had for the previous folks or anything else you want to know about some of the estimates or anything like that.
What was your name?
Trent Carroll. I'm with the Wyoming Department of Education.
Trent, is 20 million adequate for this, what we're trying to do here?
Well, Mr. Chairman, that's a good question. As you heard previously, this bill has changed pretty drastically from where we started. The original estimate of 40 million was based on the inclusion of both the pre-K and the K-12, as well as the means testing that was in the bill at the time. So now that we've kind of moved to more of just a straight 6,000 per student, it's hard to say if the 20 million is enough or not. We really don't know how many students will participate in this, so that would really be dependent on that number.
Mr. Carroll,
Yeah.
this is just a hypothetical. If you ran a private school per se, private Christian school, would you be increasing your tuition by, say, $6,000 in anticipation of the passage of this bill?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Nethercott,
I know I would, Mr. Carroll.
I can't really answer that, but there may be some folks in the room or online that could speak to that from the private school perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll.
Other questions for Mr. Carroll? Other questions? Other questions? Hearing none, thank you, Mr. Carroll. Thank you for being with us today. Anyone else want to speak on House Bill 166?
Mr. Chairman, Committee, my name is Nathan Winters. I'm the president of the Wyoming Family Alliance. Please forgive my voice. I have kind of lost it just recently. But when it comes to the finances, I was wanting to provide just a little bit of feedback for you guys. So we had our team just do some research on how many students were involved in current private schools at the end of the 2023 school year. And what we determined is that it was basically about 2,700 students. At $6,000, that would be right at $16,248,000 that would be necessary. Now, the pickup rate when ESAs have been introduced in other states is really only about 3%, so it may be quite a bit less than that. But I believe that the reason why the $40 million previous appropriation was in there is it was biennialized, first of all. Secondly, it basically, we don't know for sure how many children may come from other sources, but it was just kind of a round number. And so we're just kind of looking at where that would be. I do not think that it would be difficult at all, of course, to stand this up at 20 million. It's 20 million. So I think that we're in a pretty good spot right here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winters. We had some questions for private schools if they'd raise their tuition. Do you want to answer that?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. I do know that many of the private schools who currently operate because they are in it for ministry, essentially. And they're doing everything they can to actually try to help those children right now. I do not believe that they will be raising tuition rates. Oftentimes what you'll find is that they're actually having to go out and raise funds through massive fundraiser drives, and even then, sometimes running at a deficit. So this might actually help in many different ways, help those schools, first of all. But secondly, even in all of that help and all of the work people are currently going through, oftentimes you'll find lower income people who are essentially locked out of an education opportunity like this. And I believe truly this will help lower income people get the education that the parent actually desires for their child.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes?
Mr. Winters, if you know approximately how many Montessori schools are operating within the state?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, I am not sure how many Montessori-specific schools there are. From what we found, it looks like there are 38 private schools. Many of them don't go above 8th grade. A few of them do go from 9th to 12th as well. But of those, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, how many are the number of actual students are in each separate school. But as far as how many are current Montessori-style schools, I'm not sure.
Other questions? Other questions for Mr. Winters? Other questions? Other questions? Hearing none, thank you, Mr. Winters. Anyone else like to speak on House Bill 166? House Bill 166. No, no, hearing none. No more public, no more Zoom. No, we'll close public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure?
Move the bill.
Moved. And I'll second. Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman? I would make an amendment to reduce the appropriation, knowing that the Senate is as conservative as it fiscally is,
Yes, it is.
to 5 million.
On page 28, the 20 million to 5 million.
Correct.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And so let me just do a little math here. $6,000 per student, I think that's about 830 students. Based on the testimony provided, that's well beyond the estimated amount of student participation. That's my motion, Mr. Chairman.
I thought we heard there was 2,700 students.
I don't recall hearing that testimony, Mr. Chairman.
Was from Mr. Winters.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
But
can
I
we,
don't know if they'll all, he said he didn't know if they would all participate.
yeah, Mr. Chairman, can we bring him back up for just a minute?
Sure. Mr. Winters, come on back up.
Representative Winters, I recall your testimony being that there were 38 private schools in the state, correct?
That's right. And what we found, Mr. Chairman, forgive me, Mr. Chairman and Senator, what we found is there were 2,700. That would be 100% of the private school enrollment, at least that we have statistics for at the end of the last school year. So 2,700 students. You're correct.
But you said they probably wouldn't all convert. There's a possibility. Wouldn't get them all, but we get half of them maybe.
Mr. Chairman, we don't know exactly how many might apply. The pickup rate in other states is significantly less than 100%. And so we don't know how that'll apply here in the state of Wyoming. So
Representative Winters, what was that pickup rate? I know that you mentioned it.
I believe it was something like 3%, and then another statistic I saw was closer to 10. So, we're not exactly sure.
10%?
It could be,
So
Mr.
divided
Chair.
by 2,700,
Yeah.
833, divided by 2,700.
And
Well,
why
Mr.
weren't they
Chairman?
picking up more than that? What's that about?
Mr. Chairman, with any new program, oftentimes the information has to trickle out. And so over time, that pickup rate can grow. But we're talking year one in a situation like this, or even year 1 and 2 contemplated if it were biannualized.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, if I may go back to my amendment,
sure.
that $5 million would
Thank you, Mr. Winters.
that $5 million would contemplate exactly that 3%, or a third of the private school students, 833. So, again, far and above exceeding that pickup rate.
Senator Scott, did you have a comment?
Mr. Chairman, one thing that you would have to allow for is going to the lower figures, there will be significant number of communities where there's no option. And so you would, in those communities, you would be picking up a different mixture than if you were even statewide.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you. Mr. Winters, do you have another comment?
Mr. Chairman, please forgive me for throwing a monkey wrench in this. I was just informed that it was about 3% of the total student population, not just of the, so that changes the numbers dramatically. We're closer to 93,000 students across the state of Wyoming, total student population, so about 3% of that number. So forgive me for the previous number. I thought that was of just those who were not part of the current public education system, so.
Okay. Okay, back to the bill. We got an amendment. Amendment changed it to page 28, the 20 million to 5 million. Any other comments? Any other comments? I think that can be a voice vote, can it? Or does it have to be
It can be
roll
a
call?
voice vote or roll call on the bill.
We'll go a voice vote. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Any other discussion on the bill?
Roll call.
Any other discussion on the bill? Linda, will you do roll call, please?
Senator Anderson.
Aye.
Senator Guru.
Aye.
Senator Nethercott.
Aye.
Chairman Anderson, House Bill 166 engrossed is a due pass amended. Three
Okay.
ayes.
All right, thank you. We probably have time for one more bill. Let's get one more bill here. House Bill 58, Forensic Genetic Genealogy Pilot Program. Big title, small bill. Wonderful. Is there a presenter here? Aha, there's a presenter right there.
Right there.
Yeah,
Hello, Mr. Chairman. And these two are really companion bills. So I think we could fly through them both with your indulgence. But I will present to you forensic genetic genealogy. So what you'll see in House Bill 29 is some work of your Joint Judiciary Committee. And there's a lot of interest in getting information about how many cold cases are out in Wyoming. And as I think the Judiciary Committee has discovered, that number's a bit of a moving target. So what Senate File 29 would do would create a cold case database investigation, or a cold case database within the Department or the Division of Criminal Investigations. Your Select Committee on Tribal Relations, which is what I'm here to present to you on today, is House Bill 58. This is forensic genetic genealogy, and you might be familiar with genealogy where you can trace your ancestors, and it's usually kind of backward looking. What forensic genetic genealogy allows people to do is look for contemporary people that exist. So if you have the remains of a victim or of someone who committed a crime, it's actually forward-looking, and you can help identify who those individuals might be using DNA databases that are out there. So what this bill would do, although it started in your Tribal Relations Committee, our thinking was that as law enforcement, assuming House Bill 29 were to pass, local law enforcement would be looking at these cases that they'd be sending to DCI for their database. And as they were doing that, they could look and see whether or not a particular cold case has a certain number of genetic markers that could be outsourced for a pilot program. There are companies right now that specialize in forensic genetic genealogy, and our thinking, again, in tribal relations was rather than relying on DCI to add FTE, that we would create a small pilot project to see if some of this work could be outsourced. So local law enforcement would set up DCI would set up a pilot program to award grants to those local law enforcement agencies as a way of just kind of taking that work off their plate, and then DCI would remain committed to their core functions as well as law enforcement and actually using that data to solve cold cases. So the appropriation asks for $150,000. Our thinking was that that money would be available for a 6-year period, and anything that wasn't used would revert. If you're wondering where we came up with that number, I believe in the interim, we heard a rough estimate, and again, this is not a known number, that there might be about 125 cold cases in Wyoming. Again, we don't know that number solidly, in visiting with some of the vendors that provide this FGG practice or protocol, cases can range anywhere between, I think, $1,500 and $5,000 per case. So on the high end, if you multiplied $5,000 by 125, that would be $625,000. I don't think the number will actually be that high because they have to have a certain number of genetic markers, and even if you have a cold case, there's not necessarily DNA that would support that. So our thinking again in tribal relations was if this program was a success and we appropriated all the dollars, then we'd have at least an idea of what additional need would be out there, and then, whether or not we like this technology. So it's, I think in the universe of what we're asking for, a very modest appropriation, and we didn't want to bring this to you in a budget bill and a budget footnote, so it's a standalone bill, but thank you for indulging me, and I'm happy to answer questions about that, but I wanted to explain the other bill, even though it's a joint judiciary bill, not something I worked on, but they're intended to be companion bills.
This test or experiment would be on anyone in Wyoming or just for the tribes?
Mr. Chairman, any local law enforcement agent in Wyoming. The FBI, as you know, has primary jurisdiction over federal cases. This money would not be available for them. But as we see on the reservation, there is a large Native population, so crimes occur off reservation as well, and so they would be impacted by those where Fremont County Sheriff's Office or Riverton PD or Lander PD were the primary investigators. They would be eligible for those funds.
Any other questions? Yes.
Mr. Chairman, in light of the time, I'm prepared to move forward.
And I'd offer, we did not receive opposition. DCI came and testified at our hearing, so I think there's support for this bill. I don't want to speak for anyone, but that's the impression I got.
Okay, thank you to the bringer. Thank you, Senator Ellis. Any other comments?
Chairman Anderson, Kit Wentland, Tribal Relations Policy Advisor to Governor Gordon and Special Counsel. I know we're short on time. I would have our liaisons with me, but one's got a sick kid and the other one through technical difficulties on my end. We weren't able to get him signed up in time, but Governor's office supports this appropriation, this bill, its companion bill, and the way it's set up, as do the liaisons. And if you have any questions, happy to stand for them.
Any questions? Any questions? Any questions? Thank you, Kit. Any other public comment? Any other public comment? If not, I'll close public comment.
Mr. Chairman, I would move House Bill 58.
House Bill 58 moved and seconded. Any discussion, any changes,
Question?
Question? Linda, call a roll, please.
Senator Anderson.
Aye.
Senator Guru.
Aye.
And Senator Nethercott.
Aye.
House Bill 58 passes with 3 ayes.
And Mr. Chairman, I would move House Bill 29. Move faster.
Is there any discussion on House Bill 29?
Mr. Chairman, I think the senator explained both bills.
Yes, she did. She did a nice job, but there's somebody here who'd like to talk about it.
It's 12:59, we gavel in at 1 PM. It's 12:59. We gavel
Chairman,
in
just
at
here
1
and just in
PM.
case, I believe Senator Ellis did a fine job.
Okay, good.
Bill's been moved and seconded.
Moved and seconded. Would you read the roll call, please?
Senator Anderson.
Aye.
Senator Guru. Aye. And Senator Nethercott.
Aye.
House Bill 29 engrossed passes with 3 ayes.
It's not surprising why they don't like me.
Thank you, Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Senator Ellis, for a twofer.
Twofer, did I say twofer?
Thank you.